Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Andrea Weckerly, and welcome to the Ready Living podcast, where each episode is designed to educate, inspire, and empower you to create the life you want. Thanks for joining us, and remember to subscribe for free on your favorite platform. My guest today is Dana Zhaxylykova. She is a microplastics researcher and science communicator passionate about environmental sustainability and microplastics. She has published scientific work on microplastics in Kazakhstan and co-authored research on faster microplastic detection methods in Germany. Through her social media platforms, she has reached a global audience of over 100,000 followers, translating science into stories that inspire real change. Her work has been featured on the BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, and PBS, and she is also the co-founder of Microplastics Free, an innovative app helping people identify and reduce microplastics in everyday products. Welcome, Dana.
Hi.
Let's start with explaining what plastics are and the difference between plastics and microplastics. And I should note that you've said that one of the biggest obstacles in microplastics research is that we still don't have a single consistent definition of plastic.
That's true. The term plastic itself comes from a Greek word, plastikos, which means flexible. When we say plastic, what we have in mind is a material that is easily moldable and flexible. There are so many things that are not plastic but can be flexible and moldable. Then if we go further to define plastics, then we would also say it's a polymer. Plastics are polymers, but not all polymers are plastics. So yeah, it's a bit difficult to give a definition. For example, some people say that plastics are synthetic polymers that were made from oil, but it's not always the truth. For example, we know bioplastics that are not made of oil, but we still consider them plastics. So it's really confusing, and that makes it a bit problematic to research plastics and microplastics. When it comes to microplastics, it refers to the size of plastics. If we call something microplastic, it's a plastic particle that is less than 5 millimeters long.
So how are microplastics created?
There are basically two types of microplastics that we often see, primary microplastics and secondary microplastics. Secondary microplastics are those that came from larger plastic objects. For example, you have a plastic bottle or a plastic bag, and once it degrades or there's any physical or chemical interaction with it, then you have these little plastic particles that come from that, and that we call secondary microplastics. When it comes to primary microplastics, it's the plastics that were intentionally manufactured to be small. Usually, these primary microplastics are used as ingredients in different things, such as industrial paints, for example, and also in personal care products. For example, there are some creams that can use microplastics as ingredients.
Let's dive into why we should be concerned about microplastics. I've heard that there is emerging concern that microplastics can have negative cardiovascular, neurological, metabolic effects, that they can disrupt our microbiome, and that they can also impact our reproductive health.
It's a big topic. I would say that we're still in the early stages of research. I'm more of an environmental scientist, but from the data, we see that microplastics are absolutely everywhere, and there's no doubt that we are exposed to that through many things like food, water, air. And of course, there's another thing which I'm an expert in, the environmental impact. We can see fish and birds dying just because there's so many plastics and microplastics in the water and in nature. The main reason that we think is probably because they eat it and they don't get nutrients, but we shouldn't also discard the idea that it could be the toxicity itself, because there's also new research popping out that it could be that as well. And another thing is the plastics in agriculture. There's so many plastics that are used in agriculture, in farming and stuff like this. If you know the term mulching, plastic mulching, it means when you have a plant and you put something around it in order to preserve the heat and water. And that was usually done with different hay and stuff. But currently, this is done with plastic bags. Our soils are very contaminated with plastic. Just to give people an idea, if you compare water, since it's moving all the time, the microplastic concentration gets dispersed. When you put a lot of plastic on soil, it stays there and it will stay there for a long time. I also worked with wastewater treatment plants. And in a lot of countries, the sludge that you get from wastewater treatment plants, they are used as fertilizers. I know it's a big thing, especially in the UK. For example, it's treated for other chemicals, but it's never treated for microplastics. And sludge is very concentrated with microplastics. In Astana, where I did my research back in Kazakhstan, we only have a bit more than 1 million people, 1.5 million. And per day, we had something like 10 billions of microplastics caught per day, just from one wastewater treatment plant in Kazakhstan with just 1.5 million people. Every time the sludge is caught, it can be used as fertilizers, and it's never treated for microplastics, as I said. So all these microplastics are going into our soil where our fruits and vegetables are grown. There's some papers that did experiments. One experiment that I know for sure is with wheat. They had the soil that was free from microplastic and the soil full of microplastics. Of course, the one that was full with microplastics, the wheat, the plant wasn't growing very fast. It was smaller. The roots were shorter. The plant itself was lighter and the photosynthesis rate lowered. There's a huge impact from microplastics on photosynthesis and on plants in general. And there was research that was done last year as well. They compared all the information. They estimated that just from microplastics, there could be a reduction of photosynthesis by 7 to 12%. And that could lead to an annual loss of approximately from 100 to 300 million metric tons for crop production, just from microplastics.
That's crazy.
It doesn't even factor in the climate change and other things that we have, like soil erosion, water pollution, air pollution, that also probably have a huge impact on our plants, on our crop production and everything else. But just from microplastics, it's already a huge number. That number has a great potential to grow because we are still using a lot of plastics.
In addition to our food system, where else can microplastics be found?
It's actually my favorite topic to talk about, hidden plastics. People don't know about it. And I actually didn't know myself until I started my microplastic research. But when you dive into the topic, you see that there's so many things that are made out of plastic. When I learned about paper cups, the language itself is so misleading. You hear paper and you think, okay, it's made of paper. Of course, paper would dissolve, right? And why it's not dissolving is because there's a very thin layer of polyethylene inside of that paper that makes your cup not dissolve. But at the same time, it kind of dissolves into microplastics into your drinks. And since also usually paper cups are used for hot drinks like coffee or tea, it also makes it even worse because heat plus plastic always equals to a lot of microplastics. Heat is one of the things that make plastic degrade. People also are very surprised that microplastics can be used as ingredients in personal care products like creams and stuff. Sometimes they use microplastics in toothpaste as well. People think that tires are just rubber, but now we also have a mix of rubber and plastic. What else? Wet pipes, glitter.
I saw on your Instagram account, you had also mentioned table salt.
Table salt is not made out of plastic, but it contains plastic, especially if it's sea salt or ocean salt, for example, since it comes from water and water is heavily polluted with plastics. I don't think there's a single thing that doesn't have any microplastics at this point. Everything is already contaminated, which makes it even more urgent for us to reduce our plastic consumption.
Because I was going to ask you if there are any places or areas in the world that are still pristine and free of microplastics, but it sounds like you're telling me there isn't.
So basically, they found microplastics in very deep points in Mariana Trench of the Earth, highest points of the Earth, like in mountains, in the snow of mountains.
So the highest mountains, the deepest oceans, all different parts of the world, the Arctic, you name it. you had decided to focus your Instagram account on microplastics at some point because of the gap between public awareness about microplastics and scientific research. How has the reception to this information been so far?
At first, when I started my account, I just wanted to talk about environmental problems. And I was a bit skeptical about sharing the microplastic topic because I was thinking that people will be bored and it's too sciencey for them. But then I realized I'm doing so much research about it and it's a very interesting topic, at least for me. And I was like, okay, it would be nice to at least make a couple of videos about that. Then I saw that people are very interested. It's not something that they hear about very often. I thought it would be nice to have someone who is in the science to talk about microplastics and to raise awareness about that, not to make it too scary, giving some tips, sharing the latest research. As I said, people are super interested in this topic.
One of the really interesting pieces of information that you shared that I came across was the direct contact to our bodies of bed sheets. You at home then were looking at your own bed sheets, isn't that right?
So basically, I just wanted to see if I have any microplastics that come from my synthetic bedsheets because I used to have ones that were made from polyester. I found a couple of microplastics just with the microscope. It was obvious that I will find microplastic, but it was nice to see it under the microscope and be like, okay, yeah, I'm changing that. I'm switching to cotton bedsheets, which is better for the environment and for me probably as well.
One of the things I've seen in your work is that you're really honest about microplastics and other environmental challenges out there and share that you've experienced eco-anxiety yourself, but that you also want to make sure people know that they can be part of the solution. And in one of your posts, you wrote, "As a scientist, I'm telling you that we have the time and it's possible to solve the microplastics problem, make changes where possible, advocate for change, and raise awareness about the issue. Together, we definitely can make this problem disappear." What are some intentional changes people can make in their daily lives, and what are some things you yourself have done?
It's really important for me that people understand that we still have a chance to solve this problem. It's really important for people to try and reduce their plastic consumption as much as it's possible, whether it's by avoiding bottled water and having your reusable water bottle with you all the time, having a reusable bag that is not made out of plastic. Even if it's something small, it still makes a difference. Some of the other things, if you do have plastic, not heating it in the microwave because plastic plus heat makes a lot of microplastics. I'm trying to switch to natural fabrics, for example, the cotton, linen, and stuff, instead of synthetics, instead of polyester or nylon or acrylics. Usually it's better quality as well, so you save money in the long run, which is also really good. Another big thing is my kitchen. Whether it's plastic utensils, plastic cutting boards, I don't use them at all. I always have a wooden cutting boards. Try and buy cosmetics that are not in plastic packaging and also without any microplastics. It's a challenge actually to do that nowadays.
Earlier, you were talking about coffee cups, but there's also instant noodle or ramen cups that people just heat up.
Yeah, that's true. By the way, the cardboard boxes of milk, they are also lined with plastic inside usually. That's what makes them very hard or almost impossible to recycle. Aluminium cans have plastic lining inside. That was something very surprising for me. If you put something fizzy into aluminium, it can give a reaction like corrosion, and they put plastic inside to prevent it. But what we didn't factor in was the plastic and microplastics.
You're the co-founder of Microplastic Free Scanner app. Tell us about that.
That's the idea we came up with my very, very small team last year. I really wanted to educate people, and that's why I created my Instagram in the first place. But it could be a bit difficult with social media. You post something once and then in 2 weeks it disappears. I really wanted to have a place about microplastics so people can learn about them, what are some common sources and how to avoid them, what are some tips and so on and so forth. So you can take a picture of different things and then it will say what's the risk of microplastics from that thing. We also have a section with the lessons. You can download it right now. You don't have to pay anything. Some of the recent additions that we added was the section with petitions, because I always advocate for regulations. I think it's really important for us to have those. So not to put all the responsibility on the consumer, but also governments should do something and producers should also have their responsibility. So there's also a section with petitions. And there's a new feature that we are going to introduce, the section with plastic-free brands. The idea came from our own users. They were like, okay, I took a picture. Now I know this is made out of plastic, but what's the alternative? So we were like, okay, we want to create a list of different plastic-free brands that we can put there, and people will have an opportunity to shop for plastic-free products.
And where can people find this?
In App Store, in Google Play. If you just put microplastic free, it's the app with a blue bottle.
The European Union's new regulation for handling of plastic pellets just went into effect in December of 2025, and its ultimate goal is to reduce the plastic pellet loss to zero, with an intermediate target goal reducing microplastic loss by 30% until 2030.
When it comes to European Union, they're a bit further. They already banned microplastics in glitter, and they will very soon or already banned the microplastics in rinse-off cosmetics, for example, scrubs or cleansers. An upcoming regulation they are currently discussing is the regulation of microplastics in wastewater. This is something that I talk about very often because I work with wastewater treatment plants, and currently there is not a single wastewater treatment plant in the world that not only reduces microplastic but just monitors them. Basically, to put it into simple words, any wastewater treatment plant in any part of the world can discharge any amount of microplastics as is possible, and it will not be monitored or fined. EU is currently discussing the regulation about that, which is really good.
You spent several years in academia and research, and then recently started working at Microsoft Bubbles in Germany. Why did you make the shift?
I had some offers from academia and there were really interesting research topics. But after 3 years of researching the problem itself, I really wanted to make a change because it can be a bit depressing only studying the problem. I really wanted to be a part of the solution as well. Yeah, and I found this company in Germany, Microbubbles. They're currently creating a new technology to filter microplastics from water, which I find really, really fascinating. The technology itself is super innovative. I really like what they're doing, their mission, and it's nice to be part of something like that. But I would definitely return to academia in a couple of years because I still think it's very important to research any environmental problem.
In an interview, I heard you say that one of your favorite quotes comes from marine biologist Sylvia A. Earle. Knowing is the key to caring, and with caring, there is hope that people will be motivated to take positive actions. They might not care even if they know, but they can't care if they are unaware. What makes that quote so special to you?
I think it's really important for us to educate other people about problems, not only environmental, political, something that is happening outside of your country. I think we should all care about each other as humans, as habitants of the same planet, of our only home. And I want to really highlight something that we always learn as the first thing in environmental studies, in ecology, is that everything is connected. We usually talk about it when we talk about ecosystem, but definitely everything is connected on our planet. Something that is happening very far from where you are, it's definitely going to affect you in one way or another. And I think it's very beautiful because it makes us all like brothers and sisters. I think it's very important for us to unite and find solutions together.
With that in mind, what are 3 things that people can go and do today to minimize microplastics use in their own lives?
As an educator, I would say first is to try and research the topic itself, trying to educate yourself. It's very important. Second, I would say, if it's possible, see what is plastic around you that is not a necessity, especially single-use plastic that you can reduce or swap with something else. And third, I would say, try to talk about the topic with other people. As long as we talk about this, there's probably a solution.
Where can people find you online to learn more about your work?
I have my Instagram account. It's Danka ZH, and the same on TikTok.
Dana, thank you so much for having taken the time today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope people learned a bit about microplastics.